Hey, do da ba 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 da do da 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 da.
Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. Today it's time to have a look at some more battle rating changes which are coming into the game in October of 2019. We're probably going to be seeing it in the next week or so. I wouldn't be surprised if they drop this week. So if there are some vehicles which are going up in BR and you want to get them ready by spading them out, this is probably the correct time to do so. Looking at the ground vehicles compared to last time, there are two changes which I'm going to have a look at. The first one is the fact that the Challenger 2 is now going up to 10.3. So it joins the top dogs, the Leclerc, the Ariete, the Leopard, and so on and so forth, as being one of those 10.3 vehicles. So unfortunately you can't hold a 10.0 lineup with the British anymore. That's completely fine though, because a Challenger, depending on who you ask, it seems like a competent top tier vehicle. I personally see the problems with the British lineups to be more about the lineup itself instead of the Challenger 2 itself. The other thing to point out as well when it comes to the ground vehicles is when you have a look at the M113s, it now labels both of the toes, which is kind of interesting. So this is talking about the Italian one and also the Chinese one. But once again, we only have one M48A1 which is listed. So this needs to be clarified, just like the M113 toes. So if you didn't know, there is the M48A1 for the Americans, and then there is also the M48A1 for the Chinese, which is right here. So the question is, are both of them going down? Is only one of them going down? Because if we just look at how this is done up here, the way that this is all working, it would at least seem to me that you would need them both to be labeled. Otherwise, only one of them is going down. So that would be nice to be clarified. Hopefully we have that soon. The major changes, though, are to three, I suppose, basic facts or basic ideas of aviation. So the first one is a bunch of bombers are getting changed. Then we have a bunch of helicopters which are getting changed, and also a bunch of the supersonic jets or the high tier stuff. Yes, we are getting, alongside 10.3 in ground forces, also 10.3 in aviation. So it seems like there has been enough of playtime when it comes to these vehicles. They obviously added in the matchmaker that anything could fight anything at top tier, and it seems like now they've been able to get enough relevant data to make these decisions. So we're going to start from the top and work our way down, not looking at the stuff we've already gone over. Just once again to make a casual comment on something from last time. I still don't understand why the P51K is going up. It is literally the same as the P51Ds. The ME264 is going up to 4.3. This, to me, is a natural change, not a surprise at all. It is one of those vehicles which, when you have a look at, it is incredibly good at performing. I got a lot of flack for making a video about the ME264, talking about mainly its repair cost and why it is so high. And as we've seen over and over and over again, its repair cost keeps increasing, and so does its BR. It's as if it is a really good plane at its BR or something, mainly because of the altitude that it gets off its spawn, and also because of its great bomb load and its amazing ability to still be able to climb with that bomb load. If you compare the ME264 with its 4,000 kilo bombs, and you compare it to something, let's say, like a Lancaster, which is a whole 1.7 BR above it right now, with what would be seen as 14,000 pound bombs, so it's about 2.2 to 1 kilo, right? So it's if we scale that up to 4 kilos, you're looking at about what? If you do 4 times 2.2, you're probably looking at about 10. So about 10 1,000 pounders. And okay, I purchased something. So basically what you're getting is an ME264 which spawns higher, which gets a bomb load which isn't as equivalent to the Lancaster. The Lancaster's is obviously better, but because it faces much better targets which can't climb to it, it's in a much better position than it. So that's why, if we compare it to any other bomber, apart from maybe the HU-177, it is the bomber which is in a great place right now. So for me, not a surprise seeing it go up. I don't think this fundamentally fixes its problems, though. as I've said many times, I think its altitude spawn that it gets is the problem, because putting up its BR, you'll just get in a situation like the B-29 is, where the B-29, you could put it at 10.0, and yes, it would actually really struggle, but if you put it at, 9.0, 8.0, anything like that, what would happen is the B-29 pilots, just like they do now, they'd turn around, or they go 90 degrees to the left or the right, climb to an insane altitude, and then drop their bombs, because that's what makes sense, and that is what is the most economical and efficient way of playing these vehicles. The ME-264 can do that without having to do the turn right now, and as it increases in BR over time, it will only get worse at that fact. It does have some hard counters, at least now that it's going up in BR, the P61, but you don't really see a lot of P61s because it's the P61 itself has a lot of hard counters, such as any monoplane that the Axis can bring along, and the British with the Whirlwind, which is obviously keeps going down and down in BR. A lot of people will hopefully be playing the P9. The P9 is a great counter to something like a 264. Also, a Brigand is as well, but the problem with being at 4.7 is you get dragged up into the 5.3s, 5.7s, where the Germans have incredibly good vehicles. So that's why, until the 264 gets to 4.7, then it will start getting up tiered, but it will still only have some counters. If you know what the silly thing is, right? So if the 264, if it got this BR increase, it would probably, if it wasn't German, now let's say this was just a British plane, it would go up in BR to 4.3, and then it would get instantly knocked down. And the reason for that is because stuff like the Do 335s exist, which are incredibly good at dealing with, bombers. If you really want to be able to annihilate pretty much anything when it comes to an allied point of view, bombing-wise, just take a Do 335 or a B6R3 and just go teach them a lesson, because that's how you do it. So, yeah, I'm not surprised it's going up. It's one of those things. The Japanese bombers, the Ki-49 2BL, and also the Ki-67 Koen Otsu, these are finally going down. One of the interesting things, if you didn't know, which still is actually not addressed when we have a look at this. So the Ki-49 2BL is going down to 4.0. If you have a look at these two vehicles right here, the 2B and the 2BL, there is nothing different between them. They're exactly the same machine. There is really only very small physical differences between them, and that's about it. They are the same machine overall. So why were these, first of all, two BR differences from each other, and why is the late still only going down to 4.0 when they are literally the same machine? This just shows that when it comes to BRs and when it comes to balance, data is much more favored over playtesting. And I'm sure, playtesting and also some nuance is taken into account with a lot of these things. But this is a concrete example where you have two vehicles which are exactly the same, and one of them has a higher BR than the other one for no apparent reason. Apart from maybe people, when they fly this one, they do better at it than they do this one for no apparent reason. The other thing as well is this would ring true if they bring in the M48 changes and don't bump up the Chinese one when they are exactly the same vehicle. So it is nice that the Ki-49s are going down. The major issue that these guys have is their bomb loads are so weak. Like, they're incredibly hard to actually... I tried going through this Japanese bomber line and trying to... Because I am a bomber pilot. I do enjoy a lot of bombers. But I tried to go through this line, and it's just impossible. It's incredibly boring, because you either get on the Pacific maps, where you have no bombing targets to go after. You, at a stock sense, with a vehicle like this, you do not have enough... kilos or power to be able to hit ships and kill them, so you can't do that. So you're hoping for pillboxes or maybe AA, and then if you get on those maps, yeah, you can get a few things, and then you can hardly do anything. If you compare this, right, so this is a 4.3 bomber right now. You could even be a bit more courteous and say, the Ki-67s, but we're going to stick with this. The Ki-49 2BL is going down to 4.0. The 264 is 4.0. The 264 is going up to 4.3. But for what seems to be an incredibly long time, the 264 has a lower BR than the Key 49 2BL. Why? I suppose the only thing you can think of is the Key 49 is more maneuverable. That's it. It definitely doesn't have the better guns, because if you actually, a lot of people just look at these stats here and think, oh, well, of course it has the better guns. No, it doesn't, because for some reason the 20mm is pointed at a ridiculous angle upwards, and you cannot, fire it down. It's got one 12.7 on the booty, the other one is in an extremely angled downwards position, and this one here is also in an extremely downwards angled position. And also, these guys, I mean, they're 7.7s, they don't do a lot. So let's say you're actually approaching this thing. There is only one gun that can get on target, and it's a 12.7. That's it. So you have to use your maneuverability to try and get this 20mm on target. And while you're doing that, you are losing altitude, and you are losing speed and becoming a sitting duck. So yeah, that just shows to me how ridiculous bombers are when it comes to their BRs and how it all works. The fact that the 264 is near the same BR as the Key 49 2B just shows a real issue. As we talked about, the Key 67s, these two, they're both going down by 1 BR bracket. So 4.3 and 4.7 respectively. These are slightly better, mainly down to the fact that they can carry a torpedo, but as you can see, they just have awful bomb loads. So the best bomb load you can get on this, right? The best bomb load is the 3.250s. So that gives you about 300 kilos of explosive mass. I don't think that's even enough to kill a base. I really don't. And then you compare it to, oh look, this thing again, for 1,000 kilos. And the Key 67s are at higher BRs than that. And even with the changes, they're going to be, well, one of them's going to be at a higher BR. How ridiculous is this? Like, the Japanese bombers are just in such weird places when it comes to their BRs. And yes, this one has a little bit better coverage. It has the 12.7, and it has a 20, which can actually fire backwards instead of at an extreme angle. So it is slightly better, sorted out. But still, these are way too high if we compare them to every other bombers in the game. And the fact that an Otsu, the Key 67 Otsu, with maximum 300 kilos of explosive mass, is the same BR as the G5, with 800 kilos. And yes, the G5 handles like a barge, and yes, it is a real annoying pain to fly, but seeing it at this BR as the same, I don't know, it just makes no sense to me. So it's nice that these are going down, but the good thing about having a look at these BR changes, maybe you can now see how there is a real issue when it comes to bombers in general and their BRs. Mainly, a lot of bombers are okay, especially the German bombers. The British bombers are generally okay because they're kind of high risk, high reward. They're quite high repair costs. They have high bomb loads, so if you can get to the targets, you can do really well. But the issue is, can you get to the targets? B-29 should have never been added to the game. Tu-4 is in the same boat, but when you look at the Soviets and the American bombers, they're generally pretty good as well. But the Japanese bombers just suck. Like, they really do, and they're way over BR'd, and they have been for a very long time. So after those, the next changes are some American ones. So we have the B-17 Elate, the PBY, PB4Y, and the other two PB4Ys as well, all going down. So the Elate is going down to 5.0, and all of the PB4Ys are going down to 5.3. So I'm going to do a review on the PBY, probably in a few weeks when I've ground it out for the Chinese. This is the B-17L though. The main difference between it and the E is the fact that it has slightly different gun placements. So you can see on the E, you have this like pokey out gun here. You got the you got the 50s on the back, 50s on the bottom, and then a bunch of pokey holes where some have guns out of them, right? And then you've got the top turret here. If you have a look at the L, the main difference is that you have a different ball turret down here, and that's really about it. You know, it's a very similar machine. Maybe it has an extra gun on the front, but it's not really going to make too much of a difference. So you can see the difference in the ball turret. That's the main difference between the two things. So these being at different BRs never really made sense to me. Since the usefulness, wait, oh, they're putting the E down as well. Oh, this is wonderful news. Okay, well, first of all, it didn't really make a lot of sense to me that the E and the EL were at different places. There was no reason for me to grind out the L, because it's exactly the same as the E, apart from a slightly different, ball turret and maybe a slightly different, gun. When it comes to its general usability, its actual bombs and its coverage, they're pretty much the same. But seeing them both go down is good. The B-17E is fine at 5.3. It has it has good bomb loads generally. If you have a look at it, 6 1,000-pounders is nothing to scoff at. Yes, when you compare it to the 264, it's still insane. When you compare it to the Grief, it's still worse than it. But you know how it is. There's only so many times I can say it, without pissing off too many people, but it is true. Then we have a look at the late. The late is in the same boat. They're both in the same boat. They're very good at bombing. There's two factors which get in the way of the B-17s ever becoming meta again, and that is the does existing. If you have one doe on the enemy team, it can kill 4 American B-17s without even thinking, before they even get the bases. The B6R3 as well is in the same boat. So everything else can't generally climb to a B-17 before it gets its bombs off, and therefore, your job is technically done. So yeah, stuff like the does, or if you get on Pacific maps where stuff gets air spawns, you're screwed. So that is a bit of a problem. Your general repair costs on these, though, are pretty low, so you can afford to get shot down a bunch of times and be okay. It's very annoying to do that. Just keep getting shot down over and over again. The frustration can definitely be there. The PB4Ys are really awful planes to fly. The reason for this is you pretty much gain. So let's talk about the PB4Y. I've talked about it a few times. I think these should actually be lower than the B-17s. You gain some bomb load, right? So that's good. But you lose coverage. So you gain coverage above the PB4Y, and you lose coverage below the PB4Y. You also lose a ton of speed. You lose about 100 kilometers an hour flying this thing over something like a B-17. And even though you gain, the bomb load, your only option is really to dive to the deck and hope that nobody sees you. The problem with this is the DOE 335 has access to MG151s. MG151s got a damage increase a very long time ago at this point, and they're incredibly good. And all it takes is one hit on the PB4Y to unbalance it, and then it just hits the ground, because you're going too fast, because you've decided to go close to the ground, and because you're so big, because you're such a massive walrus, it is so easy to hit you, and therefore you just hit, you hit the deck. And then if you decide to stay up, if you decide as an individual that you're going to take the forces of the Luftwaffe head on by, pottering around at about 350 kilometers an hour, where your B-17 friends are going at about 450, then you're just going to get clobbered. And that's what happens every time. It's really frustrating flying stuff like the PB4Ys, so I'm glad they're going down. The Sterlings, finally, my brothers, the Sterlings finally get dropped in BR. I have no idea why they're so high. I would always take the Halifax over the Sterlings every day, mainly because of its BR. But you can see 27 500s, 9 1000s. They've got good bomb loads, but the problem is the coverage. So You can see also the Halifax can take 9 1000s and 6 500s or 15 500s, so it can take a very comparable bomb load to the Sterlings. The only place I would have to do a calculation, but I'd probably say they might win. They're probably ahead actually when it comes to the 27 500s. You know what? Let's just work it. So no, I can't be bothered. I'm guessing the Sterlings will be slightly ahead, but it's going to be very close. The problem is the coverage. So one of the great things about the Halifax at 4.0 is its bomb load is great, its general maneuverability is great, speed is good, and also it has two sets of quad turrets, so two sets of quad 7.7s. These keep it alive, and normally it means that even if you get hit hard, you can normally trade one for one. You know, if you've ever played the Hurricane, you know how dangerous 8 7.7s are just looking at a target, and that means that you can generally take out a BF-109 or a Focke-Wulf, whatever you're flying. Now imagine if you increased the Halifax by 1.0 BR, and you took away two of its guns looking backwards, and you made it so the top turret, the fuselage top turrets, couldn't aim directly backwards. That is the Sterling. In a nutshell, it's just a worse defended plane, and it's also a bigger unit. You could definitely see the shift towards the idea of night bombing and all of this when you have a look at the Sterling. So, with that said, and with looking at the other Sterling, which is of course the Mark III, the main differences between them, as you can see, is the Sterling has the two dual turrets, and then it has the quad 7.7s, then it has a single gun. Where does it actually have that single gun? Just have a look real quick. But I grinded out the whole of the Sterling because I was like, I'll do it. Oh, look at this, the Piddler. The Piddler at the bottom, the Piddler on the roof who doesn't do anything. But on the Sterling Mark III, you can see, you got the quad turret, you got the dual turret at the back, and you got the guy on the front, and I just gave up on this machine. It's just if you get to a target with it, you do great. But the problem is you're too slow and you never get to targets. Just look at the speed of the Halifax compared to the Sterling. You're 50 kilometers an hour faster most of the times. You're more maneuverable. You have better defenses. Like, it's just always go in the Halifax over the Sterling. And you also are not the same BR as DO 335s. Like, it's as simple as that. So seeing these go down, once again, great. Another thing to point out about the Sterlings is, if I remember, the repair costs. So the repair cost of a spaded Halifax is 7,750, Sterling is 6,700, and the B Mark III is 9,600. I don't know why this one is so much higher than the other two. Doesn't make a lot of sense. But if you want crazy repair costs, all you got to do is look at the Lancasters. The B Mark III is at 14,000. No idea why. It just is, especially when it's stock. So the Lancasters are going down by 0.3. Oh, sorry, 1 BR bracket. That's good. They have, once again, high risk, high reward. Crazy bomb loads. Don't have a lot of defense. Can't climb very well. Don't have a ton of speed, but if you get to the target, you put a big dent in it. So seeing all these go down, I'm really happy. The B-17G is even going down. Now, the B-17G I think is fine at 6.0, but seeing it go down, once again, nice for it. One thing I will mention though, please update this model. This model is very old. You can tell how old it is by just looking at it, and the silver definitely doesn't help. So it would be lovely. Oh, just look at these. Look at this. Look at that. Look at that. Can you imagine a War Thunder model? Oh, can you imagine a War Thunder model coming out today looking like this? Must be one of the oldest models in the game. Let's compare it to something which is a little bit newer. I suppose the Lincoln. That's if we zoom in on the Lincoln, do we see any of these jagged edges? Not really. No, not at all. What we see is smoothness. We see more pixels, I suppose you would say. So, oh, well, that's lovely. So yeah. Just please, for the love of God, whoever is out there, please just work on the model of the B-17G. Just the B-17s in general. They are iconic to World War II, and it's not good. It's just not good. And for cinematics and stuff, it just makes them look worse. So seeing all these bombers go down, I'm happy about it. I don't think it's going to change too much, because the main predators of these things, the attackers that the Axis have, they're still at that BR. So unless you fundamentally change the DO 335s or the B6R3s or anything like that, it's not going to help these things. The only things it may help is stuff like this Sterling and the B-17E, which may see less of them, but overall, I just don't see it affecting too much. We'll have to see if it does. I definitely think the ME-264 going up is great, though. Now we're on to the next kind of section. So the next section is talking about helicopters. The first part is the H-1G and the H-34. So the H-1G is going down to 7.7. This is because it doesn't have access to ATGMs. It's as simple as that. The H-1G is the starter aircraft for the Americans right here. And it really has an issue, and the issue is it doesn't have ATGMs. And as we've found many times, it's much easier just to point and click munitions than it is to actually try and aim them, and especially when it comes to something like this, which is very sporadic when it comes to what it can bring. So even though it can bring quite a decent amount of Mighty Mouse in the form of 76 of them, it's never really going to be meta, because you have to get close to the battlefield to be able to do anything. The other problem it has is in helicopter battles, it doesn't have access to air-to-air missiles or ATGMs, so it's such a massive disadvantage over its compatriots. So seeing it go down to 7.7, I think it's fine. I know a lot of people are complaining about it, saying that, well, what are we going to do if it gets into a 6.7? You know what you're going to do when you get into a 6.7? So if you're facing Germany, and let's say you are German, right? First of all, you got the Polk, which everybody runs. The Polk will annihilate it. If you're not using the Polk, you have a plethora of planes that will annihilate it. If you have an issue with it coming in at the start of the game, you've just been given the Ostwind 2. It's very easy to get, 63,000 RP, has access to 237mm. This will outrange the helicopter, you know, when it comes to just generally being able to shoot it. You got the Kugelblitz, but I would just say bring an Ostwind 2. And if you see that you've been fully up-tiered, just bring that out and don't worry about it. You'll only, first of all, be able to see 4 of the H-1Gs, because remember how quantitative matchmaking works. And then let's say you're Japan, right? You got the Duster, you can deal with it. You have counters. Let's say you're Italy. Italy has the, I suppose Italy has the R3T20, but if you don't want to use that, then you're kind of screwed. So tough luck, Italy. Fair enough. I feel for you. For France, you have the best 47AA in the game. Just use that. And for the Soviets, I think you're buggered too. So unlucky to those nations, but most of you are okay. Just if the problem I see a lot when talking to a bunch of people, or not a bunch of people, but just generally, you know, members of the War Thunder community, and what I find is there is a lot of dislike for things which are not like, you know, the way that people see the game being played. So if somebody is talking about how, you know, at top tier, they don't like being sniped by a helicopter, and then when you say, well, why don't you bring out a helicopter? Or you say, why don't you bring out one of the radar, you know, why not bring one out, basically one of the SAM systems, right? To deal with the helicopter, what you hear is, but I want to play my MBT. And it's like, well, okay, that's fine, but your MBT gets hard countered by something, and you're going to have to deal with it somehow. So you can either deal with it, or you can just keep screaming about it. And that's kind of like how I see this thing, you know. I don't see this having a massive impact on the game. When it comes to it moving down 7-7, like, it has so many counters already, and I generally see tanks just shooting the damn things down. They'd seem more of a hindrance than anything else. It basically means that the American team just has 4 less tanks on the ground. Like, the amount of damage that H-1Gs do compared to their amount of time that they take up in the game is very, very low. And once again, they can be hard countered. So if you're worried about them, being all over the place at 7.7 now because they can't get uptick into 9.0, well, remember, as I keep getting told many times, that 7.7 gets uptick a lot into 8.7, and also with the fact that with the H1G, just learn to take out its counter. It's not hard. It really isn't. If I see, like, over a week that there is a specific type of plane which is being brought in a lot, like if I'm playing, like, 4.7 German, and I see a lot of P-47s and P-51s, well, I start bringing out my BF-109K4. Or I start bringing out something which isn't the grief and, annihilating people. Or I just bring out an Oswind to deal with them, or an Oswind 2. Like, it's just how, it's how lineups have to function. You have to be able to counter what people are throwing at you. When it comes to H-34, it's not a surprise that it's going up because it's got a bullpup. But at the same time, my experience with the H-34 has not been a great one. So what I found with this machine, right? So I have an auto kill every 5, well, not every 5, about every 3 minutes. So the match that I was able to do pretty well on when I really got the hang of this thing was American Desert. And I took off from American Desert, hovered above my airfield, air base for the helicopters, shot the bullpup, was able to kill someone, landed, reloaded, up again, shot, killed, landed, reloaded, so on and so forth, 4 times. I was able to get 4 kills in the space of, I think it was around, right, if we just look at the normal mark, it was around about 6 minutes, right? So 4 kills in 6 minutes. Now I know for a fact, the places where I killed those tanks, it can be easily avoidable to, not get shot from there. There's a lot of cover in those areas. And also, I believe that I can be much more useful in a tank at that point than the helicopter. So even though I'm getting these direct kills, and I'm doing pretty well if you look on the scoreboard, at the same time, we lost the match. And there have been many matches where I've played this H-34, and what has happened is we lose the match because we have not enough tanks on the ground. And what happens is the German or the whatever team is facing us just rolls over our tanks where they're depleted because of the people in the helicopters, and then the helicopters can't make up the difference by getting the kills, and then the German teams are just sat outside the spawn after, they've killed the first wave of tanks, and they can just sit there all game and they win. So even if the helicopter pilots decide to transition to ground forces, they have to fight their way out of their own spawn. And that's my experience in the H-34. So seeing it go up, I can definitely understand it, but at the same time, I just don't think it's a great vehicle because of its impact on the game. I really like the one-click ability of it. It makes the game incredibly simple and also very unenjoyable at the same time. But I can understand the allure. I just don't think it's as good as has been portrayed by a lot of people. So also we have a bunch of other helicopters, the Alouettes 2s, the Mi-4. Why is it in Russian of all things? The Mi-4 AV, this one, the Soviet helicopter. Then we have the Scout, and also the Wasp and the H-34 for France. All of these are also going down. So after about a year of having helicopters in the game, we're now starting to see branching out of helicopters. So instead of just strict 8.0, 9.0, 10.0, we're seeing more data coming in, we're seeing which helicopters are good against what, and now we're going to see more expansions of the BRs. So I would be incredibly surprised if over the next year or so we don't see an expansion of helicopter BRs, just like we've seen with jets and everything else. So what I mean by that is going up to 10.3 or 10.7, stuff like the Eurocopter Tigers and probably the Apache that's going to come in, and all of these things are going to be, or they should at least be a higher echelon than everything else. But at the same time, if you have a look at the 9.0 vehicles, it would be ridiculous to say that all of the 9.0 helicopters have the same power behind them. And hopefully, with these changes, this will finally, reflect that. So with the H-34 going down to 8.3, and with the Wasp going down to 8.7, and the Alouettes going down to 8.7, the only thing that I look at here is basically their usefulness when it comes to their ATGMs. So if they're a little bit more useful, or it's easier to use the ATGMs, and what I mean by that is they're not part of the grind, such as for the Alouettes, where you get the SS-11s, 4 of them overall, they're going to be a higher BR, and then stuff like the Mi-4AB, where it's hard to get the ATGMs, or the H-34, which, is kind of it's only got access to 2 ATGMs, they're going to be lower BR. That's pretty much how I'm seeing this. So the less ATGMs, the lower the BR, and then the vehicles which aren't very good at 9.0, but have a decent amount of ATGMs, they're going to 8.7. The next one is the series of planes. So the FJ4B is going down to 8.7. Now, I've seen a lot of talk about this. The only thing for me that this changes with the FJ4B is, first of all, with the VMF. So the VMF being the gift vehicle, when we have a look at it, it was for the good old summer event last year. And this vehicle is pretty good in ground forces, with access to the bullpups. And seeing this go down to 8.7 makes me incredibly happy, because now it can actually be used in its general role, which is some kind of ground attack idea in War Thunder. The problem with the FJ over recent times is because it's in that 9.0 bracket, it gets up-tiered a lot to 10.0. And that means it either gets eaten by Supersonics, and it doesn't also have it doesn't have AAMs, right? So therefore it can't use them against other machines. I don't even think the Tech Tree one has AAMs, does it? Let's have a look. Oh, it does have AIM-9Bs. Okay, so it can do a little bit better because it has the really terrible AIM-9Bs, but it's still there. The main thing is, though, is that now with them at 8.7, they don't face a ton of Supersonics, and also they're going to fall into this interesting, bracket of planes. The G91s are also getting moved down. I disagree with that decision. I think the G91s are generally very good, but you can see that there is a general shift going on here. So if we just look at these general BR changes, you have the 10.3s, right? So the 10.3s are the Supersonics, right? And they're the fast Supersonics, right? So the F100D is at 10.0, everything else is at 10.3. The MiG-19, the reason why these are higher than the F-100, crazy acceleration. That's about it. Even though the F-100 recently got an increase in that, I don't think it's as much as the MiG-19s. Then you've got the 10-Os, which are we're not too close to the 10-3s, there's still a decent difference. And the only reason the F6 is here is because of its SRAMs. Right? In every other way, it's inferior to the top ones. But these are the Klinger honors. Then you have the 9.0 to 10.0 bracket, which is not supersonic, but has access to pretty good anti-air missiles, right? Or AAM, sorry. So 9.0 to 10.0 is your AAM region, and then 8.0 to 9.0 is we're going to be more gun region. So instead of just seeing, just a ton of AAMs being thrown around the place, instead of what you're seeing is most AIM-9Bs, and also mainly going to be using guns. So those seem to, at least to me, be the 3 separate parts of jets that we have now, not including, below 8.0. So you got the Supersonics at high tier, then 9 to 10, you've got AAM usage and also good speed. Then from 8 to 9, you have this area which is very reminiscent of what 9.0 used to be, when it comes to the vehicles which used to be there. So the Sabres and the G91s and the Canadair Sabres. So for me, I think this is only a positive change, right? Like you are now further pushing apart these sets of aircraft, which can only be good. from a gameplay perspective. It means that you should get better matchups for specific aircraft. It means that certain aircraft, such as the FJs, don't have to get battered by Supersonics all the time. It means that you now have a situation where you are able to differentiate between what you want to play. And I'm sure this means that a lot of people are going to be playing 9.0. That's fine. You know, it is how it is. People are going to do that, and at the same time, that's okay. The other thing to also point out is the Shenyang F5. So the Shenyang F5 is actually going up in BR. So one of the main critiques that I had for the Shenyang is that it was 9.0. And this has a better engine than the MiG-17, has access to PL2s, so you are combining the power of the MiG-17 and 9.0 with the with its guns, with a better engine and air-to-air missiles, which is something the MiG-17AS has right here. But you're also giving it a better engine, so it's nice to see that going up. Now that makes sense to me. Hopefully we don't have any of those issues going forward. But yeah, all these changes I think are positive. You know, if you look at the generals, you know, the Challenger being at 10.3, yeah, that kind of sucks, but you can understand it if it's on the par of all the other vehicles. Seeing helicopters get more defined BRs now instead of just them being a block BRs, I think shows great well, not really a push, but it shows that we are now evolving the helicopter game where instead of just making everything the same BR, now there's a little bit more nuance to it. Dropping the majority of the bombers, I think, is good to see if they get more play, and also having these more defined jet BRs of supersonic, AAM, and then, you know, fast with guns and more maneuverable is really good as well. So I'm happy with these. There is only a few I question, and those are pretty much the same as the last time, and also the Key 49. I just don't understand why the Key 49 2BL is the different BRs to the 2B, because they're exactly the same vehicle. I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time. I'd just like to thank Ambrosius McClellan, B. Young, Blackie, Daniel Stanton, John Ryman, Joseph Anders, Martinez, Mopar 1969, Moxie, Super Cacti, Uyans Terry, and Elove Goats, and of course Seductive Trash Can for supporting the channel.